Hello and welcome to Beebe Book Buzz, the November edition. And I'm here today with Ari DeLovo and Jeff Clapes, back from
Beyond
Greece,
Beyond
Yes.
Beebe.
all the places that Jeff goes to. Jeff's got a traveling librarian program coming up at the library.
I do, yes. We're going to Krakow,
That's right,
first week in December.
December. So yeah, if you're seeing this before the first week in December,
Sign up for that.
Anyway, we are here, as always, to talk about the books that have been floating our boats recently. And I'm going to start today with a book called This Other Eden by Paul Harding. And this book was inspired by true events, the story of a small mixed-race fishing community just off the coast of Maine. It's called Malaga Island. The actual name of the island is Malaga. The community was founded by a former enslaved man and his Irish wife, who settled, I believe, the story in the book says back in the late 18th century, so 1790 something. And after decades of living on this island, the entire community was evicted in a wave of enthusiasm for the racist ideas of eugenics, which happened in 1912. So you might be tempted to think of this then as historical fiction, but I would actually kind of caution against that. It's not. The very basic plot points come from history, but Harding himself says that he just really used it as a jumping off point, right, to create this work of imaginative fiction. And really what you're getting here is a picture of this community. They're only 300 feet from shore across, a little, but they are completely isolated. They're a microcosm. They're a wide range of amazing characters of all ranges of abilities, all shades of skin. And it's not really so much even their story. The plot isn't what matters so much here as the kind of what you are left with is this feeling of who they are and the essence of their being that he depicts so well. The action of there is action. I mean, there is a plot. It takes place in the week before this eviction is going to happen. The plot hinges weirdly on the actions of this Christian minister, Matthew Diamond, who comes to the community every summer to teach and preach. And despite his good intentions and the teachings of Christianity that he believes in so much, he struggles very much with very unchristian feelings of revulsion for the people that he is working with. And this drives him to do things that have consequences. So despite essentially being, a well-intentioned person, he, when eviction is threatened, he exerts his influence to get Ethan, who is a teenager who has artistic talent and can pass for white. He gets him a place off the island to be sponsored by a wealthy patron who will help his artistic career. And of course, he's chosen Ethan because he can pass for white. And he knows in his heart that this is maybe going to be not a good idea, and he does it anyway, trying to sort of save him, right? So Matthew Diamond, although he is not a character that you get to know intimately, his actions spur so much of what happens to the islanders and what happens to Ethan are all, because
of him.
Because of him,
Yeah.
So I don't usually give a whole lot of information about the author, but when I'm talking about books, but in this case, because the writing in this book is so front and center, so extraordinary, it really is, and the author's background and his kind of enthusiasms in life feed into that writing style so much. I just thought I'd give you a little bit of background about Harding, who is actually a North Shore boy. He was born and raised in Wenham.
Oh, I didn't know that.
You didn't know that?
No,
Yeah. See,
no idea.
and Tinkers, which was his first
Tinkers,
book
yeah.
that he won the Pulitzer Prize for, is actually set in a town. It's not called Wenham in the book, but it's based on Wenham. He, after college, he's a musician, And after college, he went to UMass Amherst, a really very local boy. He toured the U.S. and Europe in a band as the drummer called Coldwater Flat. I don't know it myself, but apparently it had some pretty good success if he was doing that. But I bring that up because in the writing, you really feel like his musicianship. There's this rhythm and flow, kind of a feeling of like almost spoken word poetry. There's like almost like whole paragraphs, and he can write some of the longest sentences I've ever seen. Sometimes I feel a little bit overwritten, but that they feel like jazz riffs, with this kind of repetitive rhythms and those kind of musical feeling. He has a real love of nature, especially the New England landscapes, and he's obviously doing that here. He also has developed a love of painting. He's not a painter, but he has a love for landscapes and still life, which very much comes out. So what you get is writing that feels like painting. It feels like, it has this eye for color and light and detail that feel like he's just kind of painting words on the page. Wow. There are allusions to the Bible and Shakespeare. I mean, he's one of these, he's a polymath. He's just read everything, and he just seems to absorb all this stuff, theology, philosophy, history, and he now teaches those things in his writing courses. And what you're left with then is this sort of feeling of, it's big and it's mythical and it's magical and kind of muscular writing, very lush, larger than life, or maybe it's just more like it kind of manages to encompass all of life in just 220 pages.
Right.
It's not a book you can read quickly, believe me. It's tiny, but it's also slow, in a beautiful way. So I just want to give you a little bit of a feeling for this. I just printed out a couple of things. At the beginning of the book, there's a story being told about the great storm that hit when the founding mother and father had some kids, and huge storm hits, and there's going to be a tidal wave, and they're literally, it's very biblical feeling. They're hanging onto a tree. They've climbed the tree. They're hanging onto it. They're like holding babies under their arms. It's like, and it's being told by the founding mother, Patience. And he says, the water hit the south shore of the island first and swallowed it whole and smooth. Then it hit the jagged bedrock spine running up the middle of the island and broke over it, hissing like a saw blade. When it struck the slope of the bluff, it exploded across the horizon in front of the islanders in the tree, hung up and suspended for a moment in apocalyptic entablature. So you just have this kind of, biblical movie, it's like some old movie of a biblical flood. And then one of my favorite characters is Esther, who's kind of this matriarch of the island. She's a prophet. She has a sense of what's going to happen. She's kind of a little witchy, and she makes medicines and stuff for her family, and he's describing those. He says, her compounds were spare and vaporous, essences distilled, brewed, steeped, reduced, concentrated into drops and small thimblefuls by a medicine woman who herself mostly survived on pipe smoke, black tea, ocean air, and the word of God. She concocted salves salutary to lean lives lived on shallow soil and bare rock. So you just get a feeling of the kind of both the place in these things and the people, and in some ways they are as one. They all kind of are of the same thing. So plot-wise, obviously, from the history, this is a tragedy, right? But that essence of community that I was talking about before, the feeling of coming to know these individuals in their community, the sense of their strength and their beauty and their dignity and their individualism, the fact that they're just ordinary, simple people living simple lives, but they still have these qualities. One reviewer describes the community as refusing to see itself through the judgmental eyes of others. They are a society composed of people who give their neighbors the same latitude to go their own way that they claim for themselves. And I think that is such a feeling that you're left with of these people. They are actually models of dignity and humanity, as opposed to what the outside world sees them as, the disgust they're viewed with, the the way they're shunned. And that combined with the gorgeously written landscape leaves you with this sense of place and people that is just, it's really hard to forget this book. It just really sticks with you.
I remember when I read it, a lot of the detail, because it was a while ago when I read it, but and you're bringing the details back, but I do remember going on Google to find the area because the sense of place
is astounding.
It really, and getting an actual picture of what place he was talking about and what it would really look like was really important, because then it made the whole thing come to life.
Right. And of course it's an island, and so it becomes this distillation, right? Because everything that happens on an island has boundaries to it. And you're going to talk about islands later, I think.
Yeah.
I have islands too.
Yeah.
You have islands too?
I have islands.
No way.
Yeah.
Tell us about your islands.
Yeah.
You go next.
Yeah.
Jane.
Okay, I'll go next. So this is maybe a little bit more topical, just because it's on the bestseller list right now. Ian McEwan, I'm sure everyone's heard of him, even if you haven't read him.
Absolutely.
I've read a few of his more recent stuff, and I honestly can't remember which ones. And I kind of read this just because it's the new Ian McEwan, but this is definitely one of his best in years.
Okay,
and it's
that's
been
good to know.
talking, people have been talking about it. Some of the reviews have said that it's the best since probably his best known, which is Atonement, and that's at least 20 years ago
at
now.
least 20 years ago.
At least 20
wow.
years ago.
Yeah.
And Amsterdam, did he write Amsterdam?
He did.
Yes.
Yep.
So those are the other two that really stick in my mind. But
Yep.
anyway, and I think given that he's now in his late 70s, he's written a ton of things, you couldn't imagine this being maybe a little self-indulgent by the time you're at that point in your career.
Right.
But it's not. This is really good. And I was almost put off at the beginning because I knew nothing about it. I just picked it up because it is to a certain degree climate fiction.
Right.
And I enjoy climate fiction, but sometimes you're just like, I can't do this.
I can't look. Yeah.
I just can't cope with that right now.
Yeah.
And I should emphasize that although that's forms a lot of the background of the story, it's not really the story.
Right.
It's the setting.
Yeah.
So if that kind of stuff puts you off, don't avoid it for that reason.
Right.
It takes place kind of in two time periods, which he's done before. The main characters, and there are a lot of main characters, I think, are in the early 22nd century, so almost exactly 100 years from now.
Okay.
And it's Thomas and his sometimes girlfriend, sometimes colleague, sometimes both. They're historians, academics. So it's also kind of dark academia is, if you like that stuff, there's a little bit of that in it.
Right.
They are in the early 22nd century when everything has gone to hell in a handbasket. Britain, which is where all of this takes place, is now a bunch of islands because of sea level rise.
Right.
All of the libraries and archives and things have moved to higher ground for
Right.
protective purposes. The world has changed. He kind of creates that world just as a backdrop without going into a lot of detail, so you have to kind of just accept that these things happened and that's the world they're living in.
Right.
And another thing is that Nigeria has become the place where all the data centers are now. So
Okay.
pretty much or for us, the next 100 years of info about the world, all the content that we create, is now stored electronically there.
Okay.
But the basic plot of the book is that way back in 2014, which is the time period that Thomas researches, that's his background, is the period from 1990 to 2030. The literature of that time period before everything
Really
fell apart.
Okay.
There was a dinner party in 2014 in rural England, basically in what is now like Devon, Cornwall, where a poet, fictional, one of the things I liked about the book is he actually brings in a lot of real stuff into the setting, so he talks about Seamus Heaney, and
Right.
so, but the main characters are fictional, obviously. Francis Blundy and his wife, who is also a writer and academic, live in this glorious place in the countryside, and they have what becomes a very famous dinner party, where this incredibly famous poet writes a poem called A Corona for Vivian, that's his wife, which is an incredibly long, elaborate poem that he reads aloud at this dinner. And it becomes famous, infamous, over the next century because there was one copy, he wrote that copy for his wife, and then it disappears. So it becomes this touchstone for academics over the course of the next century.
Wow. Yeah.
Whatever happened to it?
Yeah.
Right.
There are conspiracies about it, got buried somewhere, and are there ways that we can find it, and all of that sort of stuff. So the essence of the plot is Thomas and Rose are researchers who are have been researching this couple, the poet and his wife, for years, and have now decided that we're going to find this poem. It's out there.
Okay.
And so that's sort of the focus of the story. It involves them taking boats, because that's how you get around England now,
Right.
to places. But really, the story, and I don't think I thought about this until I started reading reviews after, the title really is so apt, because what it all refers to is what we can know about the past.
Right.
What does it mean to be a biographer? What sources do you use? What sources are left after all this time? And I will read just a couple of quick quotes from it. Thomas, these are both from Thomas, the character. He says, "I'd like to shout down through a hole in the ceiling of time and advise the people of 100 years ago, us, if you want your secrets kept, whisper them into the ear of your dearest, most trusted friend. Do not trust the keyboard and screen. If you do, we will know everything." Because they do. That's how they know about us, is
Right.
because we've generated massive amounts of
Yeah.
data that is either electronic or was turned into electronic and is now stored.
Right.
Right.
And with AI, they can search it and so forth.
In the digital media lab.
Yes, in the digital media. But he also talks about what was lost, and looking back on this sort of last halcyon time period
Yeah.
before things went wrong. And he says, of the things that he misses, my list was long: the suspension bridges, the orchestras, street parties, and 1,000 forms of music festivals, people's gardening and cooking, their need for holidays, extreme sports, historical enactments, gay pride carnivals, the risks they took with AI, the sense of humor, the safe airplanes, the passion for pointless sports. 100,000 at a football match, which of course in their world is impossible.
It's
There's no train travel, there's no planes,
Right.
there's no,
Right. Right.
there's been environmental collapse. The second half of the book is, and I don't want to give anything away, but they do find something. I won't tell you whether they find the poem or not, but they do come across some document which turns out to be a lengthy confession by Vivian, the famous poet's wife, for whom the poem was written. And so she tells in beautiful prose that's very different from the prose that McEwen was writing for the other characters. She tells a story that turns everything else that you've known about all this on its head. It's her viewpoint, which has all kinds of interesting stuff about her first husband, before she met the poet and married him. And it's fascinating, because all of a sudden you're thrown into what we can know
In a different
that's
way.
totally different from everything that we were already thinking we could know.
Right.
So
That's
it really,
cool.
and again, the whole, the apocalyptic future of climate change and sea level rise and so forth is really just, it's the setting. It's not,
Yeah.
it doesn't drive the plot terribly much. It's
Right.
really all about people researching the past. What does it mean to be a biographer, and
Yeah.
how do you research a person who lived 100 years ago
Yeah.
despite all the stuff that you have,
Right.
which for them is way more than we have about people 100 years ago.
Yeah.
Right.
And it really is masterful. I think, you
It
know,
reminds
It
me,
sounds
it sounds a little bit like it has echoes of Possession for me. Did
Yes.
you read Possession?
Yes.
That idea of people
yeah, exactly.
researching literature in the past.
I think if you liked Possession,
Yeah.
A.S. Byatt,
Yes.
yeah,
A.S. Byatt's Possession.
you would like this.
That was a long time
and
ago too.
as with the Harding, the writing is just,
Yes.
it's beautiful, and he's good at talking the different voices
Right.
from each of the different characters. The poem,
Yep.
the poet, his wife,
Right.
the character, every one of them is distinctly their own person with their
Themselves,
own
yeah.
voice, and it's amazing how well he does that.
Right.
So it's still on the bestseller list,
Sounds
but you
good.
can grab copies at the library off the buzz table like I did.
Yep. Sounds like a good one. I'm
Yeah.
definitely reading that over Christmas. Good.
All right.
Ari,
Okay.
islands and things.
Yes, more islands and more climate change. One of the perks of working at the Cirque desk is that every once in a while there will be a book that like so many people check out and then return and say, oh my gosh, you have to read this if you haven't read it. And Wild Dark Shore by Charlotte McConaughey was one of those books that starting, I don't know, a month ago, it just started to come back and all these people were saying, I read this book in a night. I read this book in a weekend. And I finally got my hands on a copy. And it was fabulous. This book is, so Charlotte McConaughey is kind of known for writing books about climate change, the environment, animals, and all of that is in here as well. She wrote Migration, which I think is probably her maybe most famous one. There's another, Once There Were Wolves is
Yes.
another one that she wrote. And I think that one's getting optioned for like either a movie or
Yeah.
a
That was
TV show.
Yeah, that one. Is that the one set in Scotland?
Yep.
Yep.
And so this one is set in a not so distant future. We don't really, there's no date associated with it, but we know that tides are rising, water levels are rising, and the book opens with a woman who is shipwrecked on a very, very remote island off near Antarctica, so in the Arctic. And she was on a very small boat with one other person. That other person is dead, and she is like nearly dead. When the family that they are the caretakers of the island, they find her and they nurse her back to health. So the family that lives on this island, they're the Salts, and it's Dad, Dominic, and then he has 3 kids, 2 sons and a daughter. Son, Fen, is the oldest, and then, oh gosh, what's the daughter's name? I'm sorry, Raph is the oldest, that's the boy, Fen is the girl, and then Orly is the youngest son. And they've been there for 10 years. They are now the only people left. However, when they got there, there was like this whole research team that was there, and the point of the island is that there are silos of seeds for if there's sort of like a end of
Yes.
days
Apocalypse of
type
some
thing.
kind, yeah.
They're supposed to be protecting the seeds that we would need to kind of like start over. And so there were all kinds of like researchers and scientists, and now no one is there except the family. And here's the thing about this book, it is written in very short chapters. So like 1 to 2 page chapters, alternates between the point of view of the woman, Rowan, who gets shipwrecked, the dad, and his 3 kids. Those are the only point of views we get. Short chapters, tons of mystery, a feeling of like everyone has a secret. What is going on here? Why was she coming here? There's no communication to the outside world has broken down. And
the island.
Yep, island. And like, so when she's very, very sick and hurt, they're just doing the best they can to get her better, and she does get better. The youngest son, Orly, starts to take a real like affection, a real liking to her. They lost their mother when he was born, so he's never known a mother figure, and he just like follows her around. She's kind of like gruff and like, kid, leave me alone. But eventually he wears on her. But again, you're just like, something is strange here. Something is really off. The daughter doesn't live in the house with everyone else. She lives like down in this little lighthouse area amongst seals.
Right.
And like Rowan's like, what's going on? Why doesn't the daughter live with the dad and the brothers? Something happened here.
Right.
All little tiny nuggets until the end when it all comes together. I will say there is one other little teaser that I can give that doesn't spoil it. About halfway through the book, we realized Rowan was coming to the island because her husband, Hank, was working there.
Okay.
Where's Hank?
Right. Another mystery.
Ah, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is this pure psychological thriller? What's the writing
So
like? What are the characters?
Yeah, so I would say it is like a psychological thriller in the sense that the characters are, I can't even say they're very lovable because like we see them in such short glimpses and we don't really fully get into anyone's psyche. Like, so also like the father, Dominic, and Rowan, they're about the same age. And Rowan is halfway through the book, she's very clear that like Hank was her husband and they've admitted that they know Hank, but they're just like, you'll find out soon enough when this boat that is supposed to come get us, like on a specific date. Like they knew they were going to go home eventually.
Right.
They just haven't been able to connect with anyone to say like, we have this injured woman, can you come sooner? But he's like, you'll see when they cut, like just all these little hints of like, you'll know and we don't want to tell you. And she's just like, I feel like I can't trust you people. And they're like, well, yeah, we don't feel like we can trust you because we don't know what, like Hank never told us you were coming. And
so it's pretty plot driven then.
very plot driven.
Yeah.
Very plot driven.
Which is why it's a great page turner.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I can see why people read it like in one sitting.
Yeah, like because you're just like, what is going on? And there's even like, there's some chemistry between like the two adult characters, but Dominic like really hasn't like, I mean, his wife has been gone for 10 years, but like he's not, this is not like a romantic.
This is not a relationship.
I mean, they have like a little bit of like,
it's pure secrets and mystery and thrill.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the environment, like I will say, it plays a part because towards the end, like things are getting worse. The water is rising. There's like this spot on the island that they almost can like no longer access easily. And that's where there are some secrets there. And like the little boy keeps like trying to go and you're kind of worried for his safety. So it contributes to the thrill of it all for sure.
Does she write nature well?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that is definitely what she focuses on so
Absolutely.
much.
Yeah. It was just really fun.
Yeah. Okay.
It was really,
Sounds
really
like another
fun.
I'm
good
putting
one.
that on my list.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. I feel like I'm not talking about it very well, but it's so like you can't spoil it.
You convinced me to read
Okay.
it.
No, I love a good, book full of secrets. It's,
Yeah.
I mean, what's not to like,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
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 Yeah. It was cool.
All right. Well, if you want to read about islands, this is the show for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
We hope you've enjoyed. We won't be here for December because we usually take December off, but we will see you again in the new year. And until then, thanks for joining us on Book Buzz.